What is up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Lovely Loners. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the Shirogorov Neon Light. This knife is absolutely fantastic. This comes to me from a friend on Reddit, and I am just super pleased to be able to check this knife out. He recently purchased it and had it shipped through me, so I'm getting a chance to check out the knife before he does, which makes me feel terrible, but I'm also super grateful and super thankful to be able to check out the knife. The first thing I really just want to show you guys is just how pretty everything is. You've got this awesome maker's mark that's kind of milled into the titanium frame here. These beautiful milled lines. Obviously you have the proprietary screws, but they're super easy to deal with because you just stick a coin in there and you're good to go. And then you have this blade that is so smooth, so clean, tall flat grind, bead blast, and just the whole thing is really pretty. And this thing would be absolutely sweet to anodize, which I do believe the true owner intends to do. You do have a lanyard hole. You will have to disassemble the knife to get into it. I kind of like that it's tucked away and hidden. It's nice for somebody like me that doesn't use lanyards. Alright, so let's just jump into it. The features and flaws on this knife. For those of you who don't know, the Shirogorov Neon is a production knife. It is very expensive, and it's pretty tiny. Let's go ahead and give this a size comparison with the PM2. So you can see here that the PM2 has a fair amount of size on this one. Now, the Neon is a little bit too small for me, just because I like big knives. I like them to fill my hand. I like them to be a little bit obnoxious. But in terms of like general EDC, like if you only had one knife and you needed it to like be legal and be reasonable and something that you can carry anywhere and all of that, the size of this is going to be absolutely perfect. So while, it's not my cup of tea in terms of size, I can totally appreciate why it is this size, and I can fully realize how this size is beneficial to the majority of owners. The first thing I want to talk about is the clip. You can see here there isn't a whole bunch of distance. Now, when I first got the knife and was checking it out, I thought the clip would be more of an issue than it actually is, but you can actually see it's very springy for a 3D milled clip, so it actually does a pretty good job. It's pretty smooth in and out of the pocket, and I don't really have any problems with it, but if you wear like really thick, like workman's jeans, then this might not be the right choice for you. You might want a deeper space between the clip and the frame, and maybe something that's a little bit longer. Now, of course, it is relative to the size of the knife pretty great, but I'm just warning you guys, if you have that kind of lifestyle, then it might not work so well for you. But for any general attire, the clip's going to be great. It's actually really nice. I really like the tension on it. I will say that the detent is a little bit light for my taste. If this were my knife, I'd probably pop it apart and see if I could crank up that detent a little bit by bending the lock bar slightly. So, you do get deployment pretty much all the time with either light switch or push button, but I will say that holding the knife vertically, there are times where you just barely break the detent. See if I can even get it to do it on camera here. Yeah, see if I just use my thumb, you can see the knife does not deploy all the way every time. So I would go for a little bit of a snappier detent on this, but that's just personal preference. Additionally, on this particular one, the pivot does like to free spin a little bit. The next owner is going to throw some Loctite in there, or the true owner rather is going to throw some Loctite in there as I suggested, because after a few dozen flips it likes to come just a little bit loose, but that's okay. The knife still stays fairly centered, but you can see it move around sometimes when the knife is coming to a close. I think you can even see it on video if you're keeping track, but that's not a huge deal. That can be solved with a little bit of maintenance. It's just something that I'm not going to do. I was just talking to somebody else. I really don't like the design choice to have this like gap here between the blade and the frame. That's just kind of part of Shirogorov's design, and it's fine, and whatever, you do you. But I've never like really been the biggest fan of that on any of the Shiros. And then I'll also say the flipper tab is a little bit small for me. It kind of matches the knife in terms of size, but I would have done a little bit maybe less of a curve and then like popped it out like literally just this much. Like if the whole thing was about 10% bigger, which is really not asking much, I think that the flipper tab would be a little bit better. I do slip over it sometimes just because of the size. And if you had that snappier detent that I call for, I think I'd have actually even more trouble with slippage over that. So the jimping on it is nice. It gives you a good amount of grip, and you usually don't have a problem with deployment. But I will say that I would have probably made the flipper tab slightly bigger if it was me. Just if it was me. One other thing that I really like is that this bead blast or this media blast on the blade is super smooth. If you have one of the newer iPhones like the 6 or the 6S or the 7, and you kind of like rub your finger against the back of it, it's a very smooth alloy on the iPhone anyway, and this feels just like that. This is incredibly soft. It feels so good. Like, I just wish everything that was made of metal had this texture to it, because it feels so good. It's so smooth. It's so clean. I really enjoy that. So the other thing that I'll say about the blade is that it's the perfect size and shape for general EDC. It's got this really tall flat grind. It's super clean. It's got a good amount of straight edge, a good amount of belly. It's not too steep of an upsweep. You do have this drop point here, bringing the knife to a really great piercing point. This thing is absolutely going to crush anything from boxes to apples to rope, whatever you need. This thing is going to cut it, and it's going to do a great job. I can't sing enough praise about this blade. It's phenomenal. And that kind of brings me to my next point, which is that I'm going to come right out and say it. In terms of this size bracket, this is, in my personal opinion, singularly the best overall production frame lock flipper for EDC on the planet. It's just that freaking good. The action on it is unbelievably stellar. The ergonomics, it fits great in the hand with saber grip. It's excellent with pinch grip. The jimping is very light and small, but it's always like right where you need it. I don't know how they managed to do that. Well, I do. A little bit of planning and forethought is all, but it feels great in the hand. It melts away. It's tiny enough that it's going to work for most people that don't want giant knives. It's got this amazing blade on it. It's got the great clip. And you just, I get it. It's a very, very expensive knife for a production knife, but I can see why. If you're looking for that one individual knife, that one singular knife that you want to invest in and that is going to absolutely crush any task you ask of it, that's, of course, within reason for a frame lock flipper. This is not a fixed blade, but I think you guys know what I'm getting at. This is the one. This is the knife to have for those reasons. So again, while it's too small for me, and it's not entirely flawless, just really doesn't get any better than that. And so another thing that I like about the aesthetics here is that the lock bar, you can see the detent is like right there in this little cutout. I thought that was a little bit neat. And then the last thing is that this has the multi-row bearing system. Again, grab that light. See if I can show you. You can see MRBS right there. That's the little milling that Shirogorov does inside the knife to tell you what bearing system it has. These are the best bearings I've ever felt, and for good reason. The knife has such a sick action. It drops closed in the way that, like, there's just no resistance. Like, even if I take my Thorburn and drop it closed, at the very end, right before it snaps shut, there's just this tiny bit of resistance that sometimes causes the blade to hesitate right there. Right at barely. Usually it stops like right there, and it's just that ever so slight hint of resistance just at the end that you barely notice, but it sometimes causes the knife to just not have a 100% exactly fluid drop close, whereas that just doesn't exist on this knife. You know, you've got this tiny little blade on this tiny little knife, so you don't have the added benefit of this giant blade being assisted by gravity. And it's just unbelievable. I mean, over and over and over again, it just drops shut. It's so good. So I can really see how that shines through the multi-row bearing system. You know, a lot of people are like, am I going to notice or whatever? The proof is in the pudding, guys. I mean, it's so good. Like saying words like smooth or glass or whatever don't really do it justice, because I say things like that about, you know, other knives like the Bodega and the Gavco and the Wee knives. And this is on an entirely other level. So if you're going to ask yourself, is the MRBS system worth it? The answer, in my personal opinion, is yes. So that's pretty much going to do it, guys. Don't have a story time here because it is a lovely loaner. It's not my knife. I got to get this back to the owner as fast as I can because I feel really bad holding it from him and taunting him by posting it on Instagram and stuff like that and on Reddit. So thanks so much for watching, guys. If you'd like to send me a knife or EDC gear for lovely loaners, you can do so by emailing me at tovarishworks. Follow me on Instagram at tovarishworks as well. Oh, sorry, I should have said tovarishworks@gmail.com. And then follow me on Instagram at tovarishworks. If you like this video and you want to see other videos, please subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.